My name is Scarlett Martinez, 31, and for the past 5 years, I've been meticulously saving every spare dollar for one dream, a 2019 Corvette Stingray. It wasn't just a car, it was my child of spirit, a symbol of independence, discipline, and everything I had built for myself. Midnight blue, pristine, only 18,000 miles when I bought it, used for $52,000. It gleamed like ambition wrapped in steel. Every time I ran my hand along its hood, I felt pride swell inside me. I'd been dating Brian, 29, for 8 months. He moved in 4 months ago, splitting utilities and helping around the apartment. On the surface, things seemed perfect. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, clicked instantly, and shared laughter, late-night drives, and whispered dreams. But I'd always been cautious with my heart, and my Corvette was untouchable. That was my territory, my creation, my sanctuary. That Thursday, the day everything shattered, I was in the middle of a high-stakes work presentation. My laptop screen glowed with graphs and figures as clients nodded, their pens scratching, eyes flicking between me and the slides. My phone buzzed silently in my bag. Ignored it. Presentation wrapped at 2:47 p.m., applause lingering in the room. I checked my phone. 6 messages from Brian within the last 12 minutes. First, "Babe, I'm taking the Corvette to meet Jenna for lunch. Hope that's okay." My stomach lurched. He's never asked to drive it before. Why now? Second, "This car is amazing." Third, "Why don't you let me drive it more often? LOL. Fourth, "Babe, call me." Fifth, "Call me now." Sixth, "I wrecked the Corvette. Cops are here. Tell them it was stolen. My license is suspended. Please, babe." My hands went numb. I read the last text 3 times. His license was suspended? Since when? My mind scrambled. Shock, disbelief, fear intertwining like wildfire. I called him immediately. The line clicked, and his voice came through, panicked and breathless. "Oh my God, Scarlett, thank God. Listen, there was this truck. I swerved. I hit a pole. But it's not bad, just the front end. But the cop, he's asking for my license, and I can't." "Your license is suspended?" I demanded, heart hammering. "Yes, but that's not—" "Look, I need you to tell them someone stole the car, please. If they find out I was driving, I'll go to jail. Please, I'm begging you." I inhaled, stunned. He wanted me to commit insurance fraud, to lie to the police, to protect him at my moral and legal expense. The very thought made my stomach twist. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. "Near the mall by Starbucks. Hurry, tell them it was stolen." I hung up, grabbed my keys, my chest tight, mind racing. My boss saw my face. Without a word, he nodded. "Emergencies happen," he said. 15 minutes later, I was speeding toward the intersection, my heart pounding like a drum in my ears. And then I saw it. My Corvette. Crumpled, hood folded like paper, fluids spilling onto the asphalt. 2 cop cars flanked it, lights flashing, reflecting off the shattered glass. And there was Brian, standing in his casual clothes, makeup-streaked mascara and desperation in his eyes. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles whitened. The scent of gasoline, burnt rubber, and crushed metal hit me like a punch. My mind raced. He took my car without asking. He wrecked it. And he wants me to lie for him. One officer approached. "Are you the owner of this vehicle?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, forcing myself calm. "And who's this?" She gestured to Brian, who looked at me with wide, pleading eyes. My chest ached at the sheer audacity of it. "She says she had permission to drive it," Brian whimpered. "She did not," I said, voice low, firm. Brian's face went white. I pulled out my phone, opened my home security app. Paranoid as ever, I had cameras in the bedroom. 2:31 p.m. Clear footage of Brian rifling through my nightstand, taking my Corvette keys. I showed it to the officer. Then the texts, including the one begging me to lie. The officer's expression shifted. He called over his partner. Brian panicked further. "Scarlett, what are you doing?" he shouted. "I'm telling the truth," I replied. My voice was steady despite the storm inside me. The officer asked for license and registration. Brian started sobbing. "It's just a technicality. I was going to—" "Ma'am, you're under arrest for driving with a suspended license, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and leaving the scene of an accident," the officer declared. He was placed in handcuffs, screams, pleading, tears streaming down his face. I felt nothing. Numb. Betrayal had hollowed me out. I watched as they led him to the patrol car. The Corvette, my midnight blue child, lay in ruins. I called the tow truck, informed my insurance company, and started the long process of documenting every single interaction. Every detail mattered. Every choice Brian had made, and now faced consequences for, would define the next chapter of both our lives. I came home that evening to find his belongings scattered across the apartment. His clothes in the closet, his shampoo in the shower, his decorative pillows strewn carelessly on the couch. I started packing boxes and trash bags. Everything that belonged to him would leave my home. He called 12 times that night. I didn't answer, not once. I stared at the empty street outside my window, my Corvette gone, Brian gone, and felt the first raw edge of clarity. The betrayal cut deeper than the metal crumpled on the asphalt. I pulled up to the intersection, heart still hammering. The scene was worse than I'd imagined. My midnight blue Corvette, my pride, my child of spirit, was crumpled around a street pole. The front hood was folded like tinfoil, fluids pooling beneath it, and the metallic scent of oil and burnt rubber clung to the air. 2 police cars flanked the wreck, lights flashing rhythmically. Brian stood there, his cute outfit ruined, mascara streaked, eyes wide and pleading. He looked at me, searching desperately for reassurance, as though my presence could somehow erase the damage he'd caused. I stepped out of my car, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the shock of betrayal. He had taken something sacred to me without asking, driven recklessly, and now wanted me to commit fraud to protect him. My chest ached, part fury, part heartbreak. One officer approached, clipboard in hand. "Are you the owner of this vehicle?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, forcing my voice calm. "And who's this?" she asked, gesturing to Brian. Brian's lip quivered. She had permission," he stammered. "She did not," I said, voice firmer than I felt. The words tasted bitter but necessary. Brian's face went pale. "Scarlett, babe, please, tell them." "No," I interrupted, my jaw tight. "I am telling the truth." I pulled out my phone, showing the home security footage of him rifling through my nightstand at 2:31 p.m., taking the Corvette keys. The officer leaned in, scanning the time-stamped video. Then I showed her the string of texts, the ones that begged me to lie. She exchanged a glance with her partner. Brian panicked, stepping forward. "Scarlett, what are you doing? This isn't fair." "I'm doing what's right," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The officer turned to him. "License and registration?" Brian hesitated, then started sobbing. "It's just a technicality. I didn't mean..." "Ma'am, you're under arrest for driving with a suspended license, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and leaving the scene of an accident," the officer declared. I watched numbly as the handcuffs clicked into place. Brian screamed, his cries echoing in the intersection. He shot me a look through the patrol car window, a mixture of hatred, desperation, and disbelief. And in that instant, I realized something painfully clear. The man I had trusted, the one I had shared my home with, my life with, valued nothing that was mine. The Corvette, my midnight blue obsession, lay in ruin. My stomach twisted with grief as I called the tow truck, then the insurance company. My voice was steady as I described the accident, the unauthorized use, the damages, and provided all documentation. The texts, the footage, the timeline. Every detail mattered. By the time I returned to my apartment, Brian's presence lingered like a shadow. His belongings, clothes, toiletries, decorative pillows, were scattered everywhere, marking territory that was no longer his. I began packing, methodically, my hands shaking at first, then steadying as resolve set in. Everything that belonged to him would leave. He had chosen his path, and now he would face the consequences. He called 12 times that night. I didn't answer, not once. My phone sat silent, the buzz of notifications replaced by the weight of clarity. I sat on the couch, staring out at the empty street. The Corvette was gone. Brian was gone. And I understood, with an aching calm, that the betrayal cut deeper than the metal on the asphalt. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel something I had avoided, rage intertwined with grief. Rage at his recklessness, grief for the loss of something I cherished, and a cold, unwavering clarity. I would not be manipulated into breaking the law. I would not let him erase my life to save his. The night stretched on, quiet except for the occasional hum of a passing car. My Corvette was gone. Brian's face flashed in my mind. But amid the heartbreak, a strange sense of power emerged. I had chosen the right path, even if it hurt, and that, more than anything, would guide me through the storm still to come. The next morning, my apartment felt both empty and invaded. Brian's belongings, clothes, toiletries, even the little things he'd left scattered on my shelves, had been packed into boxes, ready for removal. I had changed the locks, $180, and peace of mind, if only temporarily, was mine. But Brian's influence hadn't ended. Within hours, his mother, Diane, called, screaming, her voice cutting through the phone like jagged glass. "How dare you let my son sit in jail overnight? What kind of woman are you?" I took a deep breath, swallowing the anger that threatened to boil over. The kind who doesn't steal cars, drive on a suspended license, and ask me to commit insurance fraud. There was a pause. Then Diane barked. "He made a mistake. He was scared. You should have protected him." I exhaled slowly, cold and deliberate. He didn't make a mistake. He committed crimes, and I didn't lie for him. That was the theme of the coming days. Every interaction, every call, every text, it was Brian and Diane trying to rewrite reality. Brian himself called repeatedly, crying, begging, demanding, but I didn't answer. His absence was the only thing keeping me from exploding in fury or grief. A few days later, Brian's sister Kennedy, 26, came to collect his things. Her gaze was sharp, judgmental, but she didn't argue. She saw the boxes, the locks, the clear message. He was no longer welcome. I recorded everything, proof of his attempts to manipulate, the legal necessity of my actions. Documentation would be my shield. The insurance battle was next. My adjuster confirmed my Corvette was a total loss. $47,200 would come my way after the deductible. The payout wasn't enough to buy another Corvette. Used prices had skyrocketed, but it was something, and it was mine. Meanwhile, Brian faced civil and criminal consequences. Driving with a suspended license, unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, and leaving the scene of an accident. The DA wanted me to testify. I did, armed with my texts, footage, and witness statements. Every lie he had hoped I'd tell was undone by truth, cold and unwavering. Then came the harassment. Anonymous complaints, social media posts, messages from Diane claiming I was a narcissistic manipulator. One friend even asked if it was true. I showed them the police report, the texts, the evidence. They went pale, stunned. The truth was undeniable. Still, the emotional toll weighed on me. Every time I saw a Corvette on the road, I felt a twinge of loss. Every text or call from Brian's side felt like an echo of betrayal. But beneath the grief, a fierce sense of clarity grew. I had done the right thing. I was building armor out of accountability and truth. Brian had made his choices. His mother had chosen to shield him. But I had chosen myself, my values, and my law-abiding integrity. And that choice, difficult as it was mine alone. Through every phone call, every legal document, every confrontation with the insurance adjuster, I reminded myself, I would not let him manipulate me into breaking my morals or the law. By the time the court date arrived, I was prepared. I walked into the courthouse with nerves and determination intertwined. Brian was there, Diane and his public defender in tow. He saw me and his eyes went wide. This was no longer the playful man who borrowed my car for lunch. This was a man confronting the consequences of his choices, and I was the unyielding witness. Inside, the proceedings were straightforward. The judge, weary but attentive, listened as I presented the timeline. The unauthorized use, the crash, the attempts to coerce me into lying. The evidence was undeniable. Brian's defense faltered. There was no prior permission, no misunderstanding. When the verdict came, it was precise. Probation, fines, community service, and restitution hearings. Consequences, real and unavoidable. And in that moment, I felt a bittersweet vindication, justice tempered with sadness. The hardest lesson wasn't about money or the wrecked Corvette. It was the realization that someone I trusted could betray me so completely. But it was also the lesson that standing firm, documenting truth, and refusing to compromise my integrity was more powerful than any relationship. As I left the courthouse, the sunlight felt warm on my face. My Corvette was gone, but I had reclaimed my peace. I had chosen truth over deception, law over manipulation, and self-respect over a love that had proved hollow. I still missed the car. I still thought about Brian. But I knew, without a doubt, that I had survived the storm intact, and stronger than before. Weeks passed like a slow, relentless tide. Every morning, I awoke to the quiet hum of my apartment, the absence of Brian's presence both comforting and eerie. His civil case loomed, $53,847 in damages for the Corvette, plus legal fees, but I refused to let the numbers define me. I had fought the moral battle. That was mine. Brian's mother, Diane, attempted one last manipulation. She showed up at my building, calling for me, flustered and loud. "Scarlett, it's about medical bills from the accident. You should pay." I stayed behind the security door. "I'm not paying. He stole my car. He wrecked it. That's on him." Her face twisted in disbelief. "You're heartless. My son could have died." I laughed, bitterly, coldly. He made his choices, and I won't be complicit in his crimes. Security escorted her out. Her final words, about karma, echoed in the lobby, but I didn't care. The civil suit moved forward. Brian's lawyer attempted to argue hardship, emphasizing his part-time salary and student loans. But the judge was unwavering. Illegal actions bear responsibility. Monthly payments were set, $500 for 9 years. Justice wasn't revenge, it was accountability. Even after the court rulings, Brian continued to try, through social media posts and friends' messages, to paint himself as the victim. But I was done responding. Each attempt at manipulation, each smear campaign, each post claiming abuse or coercion, I documented and ignored. My lawyer sent cease and desist letters when necessary, but I refused to engage emotionally. Through it all, I found small victories. My insurance payout came through, $47,200. Not enough for another Corvette, but enough to invest in a used 2020 Camaro SS. It wasn't the car of my dreams, but it was mine, and that was what mattered. Brian struggled. Probation, financial penalties, and shattered reputation forced him into 2 jobs. Living with Diane, juggling bills he couldn't pay. His world was smaller, harder, and entirely the result of choices he had made. I felt no joy in his suffering, only relief that the damage he caused to my life was contained. The final closure came quietly, unexpectedly. One afternoon, I sat behind the wheel of the Camaro, sunlight glinting off its polished curves. I inhaled deeply, the scent of new leather and fresh paint filling my senses. I was free, not just from Brian, but from the weight of betrayal, manipulation, and moral compromise. I reflected on the past months, the crash, the chaos, the courtroom battles. It was painful, exhausting, and heart-wrenching. But it had also taught me something invaluable. My integrity is my strongest shield, and no relationship is worth sacrificing it. I still thought of my Corvette sometimes, a pang of nostalgia and loss, but I no longer mourned. The Camaro was different, yes, but it symbolized survival, resilience, and the reclaiming of my life. And when I saw a Corvette on the road, I smiled faintly, a reminder of the storm I had weathered. I had lost a car, yes, but I had saved myself. Scarlett Martinez, 31, finally at peace, behind the wheel of her Camaro, felt a quiet triumph. The betrayal had stung, the legal battles had exhausted, and the emotional wounds had lingered, but the lesson was clear and unwavering. Stand firm, demand accountability, and never let anyone manipulate you into compromising your soul. The storm had passed, and for the first time in months, the future looked calm, open, and entirely mine.